Ezra is a very tanky boy who can shield the team, deal Genesis damage, and provide the team with different form of buffs using his mushrooms. And as our first proper fanboy, he has completely blown Miss New Babel out of the water as a preservation unit. For this video, we will actually split his kit explanation into two separate parts. We'll first just look at the basic mechanic of his skill, then we'll look at the mushroom mechanic separately as it's quite complex. Let's start with the simple part. Ezra's skill 1 is a 2-target skill that deals partially mental damage, that scale with his attack, and partially Genesis damage, that scale with his HP. Similar to 37, the Genesis part of this damage can also critically strike. And because Ezra has the highest HP in the game, the Genesis damage coming off this attack is actually comparable to that of 37 skills when crits. Ezra's skill 2 is a shielding skill. It provides the team with a thick shield, usually around 2000 that lasts one turn. While it only lasts one turn, it is significantly thicker than the shield from this new Babel. Both his skill 1 and skill 2 cost 15% of current HP to use, but each mushroom he has on field, he will get some of his missing health back. His ultimate is a buffing type similar to 37 that does no damage. When used, it provides the rest of the team with 1 Eureka and 1 moxie. And that's pretty much the base of his kit. He looks pretty mediocre with it, acting as more or less of a better new Babel, with better shielding, better damage, and ultimate that actually has utility. With that being said, let's look at the part that make him actually one of the best units specifically for main bulletin, utilized by many of the top whales since the end. Unlike Miss New Babel, Ezra has a unique mechanic that let him boost the burst damage for his team, and not just by a little. His skill 1 let him plant a red mushroom or honey fungus. When it bursts, it will apply 2 stack of vulnerability to all enemies, which increase their damage taken by 25%, with 1 stack consumed for each hit taken. His skill 2 let him plant a blue mushroom or ghost fungus. When it bursts, it will give all allies 2 stack of discernment, which is a whopping 40% critical damage boost. Similar to vulnerability, when the ally critically hit with an attack, 1 stack of this buff will be consumed. It takes 3 turns for the mushroom to mature, so if you plant a red mushroom on turn 1, it will automatically explode at end of turn 3, and your team will get the effect on turn 4. He can only plant 2 mushrooms at a time, and using his skill when there are 2 mushrooms won't plant any more of them. But if he has at least 2 Eureka, he will spend 2 Eureka to get additional effect based on the skill and his mushroom on field. If one or both mushrooms are on the same type as the skill, aka red for the debuff card and blue for the shield card, Ezra will speed up their growth by 1 turn. And if neither of them are of the same type, he will instead gain 1 additional moxies. His ultimate also interact with his mushrooms. If there are mushrooms on field, his ultimate will immediately burst them and apply their effects. And if there are empty slots, he will first place down red mushrooms in those slots before bursting them immediately. And lastly, he has 2 ways to gain Eurekas. First, when he enter combat, he will gain 2 Eureka immediately, or 4 at P1. And his ultimate also provide him with 4 Eureka each time it's used. Now, the 2 effects of his mushrooms are relatively high value, with 25% damage bonus and 40% critical damage boost. He provides one of the highest damage boosts in the game right now. However, at the same time, it will only last 2 use per mushroom, or 3 times his portraits. You must align his buff with your DPS burst to make use of them. Additionally, his first wave of buff will happen around turn 4 or turn 5 at the beginning, which greatly limits his effectiveness in shorter fights. While his shield is still very useful regardless of where you use him, he is much better in main bulletin. In fact, he is currently one of the fan favorite for players who's looking to maximize their damage in main bulletin. While it's true that damage bonus is extremely valuable, which makes Necrologist seemingly a better pick, it's actually quite plentiful at the beginning of the fight. Your character should already have quite a bit of damage bonus built in between their kit, Psychubes, and Resonance. Also, with later riots, the boss no longer punish you with damage reduction. Instead, rewards you with even more damage bonus when you play the mechanic correctly. So with that, damage bonus is actually much less valuable at lower reconstruct compared to Ezra's 40% critical damage boost. Additionally, there is a mechanic currently called recon skipping. Whenever the raid boss refill his HP bar, they will gain 2 stack of reconstruct. However, regardless of how many HP bar you break in that one hit, the boss will still only gain 2 reconstruct at the end, greatly reducing the amount of damage reduction the boss will actually have at later turns. And CM players are abusing this to increase their max score. By maximizing the damage, of their main DPS, such as a P56. With max amount of burst damage at the beginning of the fight, they can skip many reconstruct and reach ridiculous amount of damage before the reconstruct actually override the damage bonus you have. The fact he does Genesis damage also allow him to actually deal more damage even when the boss have ridiculous amount of reconstruct, making him somewhat of a sub DPS toward the end of the fights. With that being said, how do you actually play him? Well, he have relatively stable rotation. With 2 Eureka, he will plant down Blue Mushroom with his shield skill in the first 2 turns, then on turn 3, he will use skill 1 to generate 2 moxie using his Eureka. Then either a skill 1 or skill 2 to generate the last Eureka before casting his ultimate on turn 5, which is after the mushroom he planted on turn 2 burst. And with 4 Eurekas, either from his ultimate or from his portrait, his rotation will be shortened by 1 turn. Now on turn 3, you will use a debuff card to get extra moxie first, then use his shield to boost the growth of his mushroom on the same turn. This allows both mushroom to burst on turn 3 and allow you to use his ultimate on turn 4 with 2 empty slots. Of course, you should always adapt depends on the situation. Some of the characters such as 37 scale much better with Blue Mushroom, so you should instead try to mostly use his shield skill to boost its growth and fill the slot with Blue Mushroom before bursting with her ultimate, given 8 stack of critical damage boost per rotation instead. Some might argue the Genesis damage from his skill 1 is worth more, but the shield he provides also means the healer need to use less action points, which covers to some more damage from the main DPS anyway. Regardless of what you choose to do with him, it's always important to remember 3 general rules. It's more efficient to have 2 of the same mushroom on field, same color with Eureka equals much faster growth, and different color with Eureka equals more moxies. For Restless, it's better to focus on HP and somewhat crit, as he has some really good skilling over HP. And for Psychubes, Beyond Wonderland, which was released as the Tooth Fairy signature Psycube, is unironically the best in slot for him. Its superior HP plus critical rate is simply perfect for him, and even the healing bonus is not completely a waste as he does heal himself when there is a mushroom on the ground. His portraits are pretty mediocre and it's almost impossible to put it into numeric representation, so I will just quickly go over them. The strongest portraits are Portrait 2 and Portrait 5. His Portrait 2 give his red mushroom 1 more stack, and his Portrait 5 give his blue mushroom 1 more stack. So in a 4 mushroom rotation, that's 4 total more use of the buff and debuffs, which can be useful if your DPS is not the bursty type. And his Portrait 3 and Portrait 4 are pretty useless, with Portrait 3 increasing how much shield he provides, and Portrait 4 increase how much Genesis damage he does. Ezra doesn't feel very useful in a 3 on-field team, as he demands action point and the buff he provides are not quite there for what we're looking for. However, you can still use him with 37 since the critical damage bonus he provides are quite valuable. Now for 4-man team, he's one of the best support for 37. If you focus on Blue Mushroom, he can greatly boost the Genesis damage 37 deal by providing 8 use of the 40% critical damage per rotation. It also helps that his ultimate provides more moxie and Eureka. Other than 37, any DPS with high quality bursts such as Methodia, Millennia, or Black Dwarf can also work well with him. With both the damage bonus and the critical damage bonus, he can provide some very high quality burst damage to the team, as long as the rotation is aligned. Also, because his shield is quite thick, he works really well with single target healers. Some of the main bulletin boss really like to do a lot of AoE damage, and it's really not difficult to mitigate the vast majority of the AoE damage with Ezra's shield skill, giving him another advantage in main bulletin. And that's all you need to know about Ezra, a very cute fanboy who has a thick shield, some powerful buff from his mushroom that synergizes well with burst. This has been Steamed by Nex, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.